Hello and welcome to C and Data Structures training. In this session, we are going to learn about preprocessors in C. So in this session, we are learning about what are preprocessors, what are the advantages of using preprocessors, what are the preprocessors directives, what are predefined macros, and what are the operators which are used as a preprocessor. So what is preprocessor in C? Before C program is compiled in compiler, a source code is processed by a program called preprocessor. So earlier in this tutorial, we have covered how a C program is compiled. So first, all your C files and header files are taken to a preprocessor, and the preprocessor will run, and it will convert your file to a .i file. So what it does is whatever functions you have used in your libraries or other preprocessor directives that you have used, it will expand and mix into your code and generate a single I file. So this is how it is done. So command used in preprocessor are called preprocessor directives. So whatever we have used commands, for example, we have used hash include a lot while doing coding. So hash include is nothing but a preprocessor directive. Just to have a note of it, all the preprocessor directives start with hash. So whenever we have include preprocessor, for example, stdio.h, we have used hash include stdio.h. So hash is nothing but an identifier which tells C program that it is a preprocessor directive. So this is how we compile the program, when we compile the program. This is the steps that the program went through. So first, the source code is pre-processed, and expanded source code is generated. For example, suppose we have written a sample.c file, and we have used lot of preprocessors. uh, for example, hash include stdio.h, or hash includes string.h, or hash defines, or if we have used lot of preprocessors, our source code is expanded. That means all the preprocessors are simplified and merged into a one file which is called .i file, and then it is compiled, assembled, linked, and load. This we have already covered in previous sections. Just to revisit, once we got a .i file from preprocessor, compiler takes it and generate a .s file. .s file is nothing but assembly level source code which is taken by assembler. Assembler will take this file and generate a .o file. .o file is nothing but an object code file or a machine language code which is taken by linker. If there are multiple O files, linker links those .o files and generate your executable file. So what are the advantages of preprocessor? Preprocessor are helps program easy to develop. So suppose we are using a hello world program and we are printing hello world in our program. So how preprocessors are helpful? We are adding a printf statement. Printf is defined in stdio.h. So we need not have to write printf again and again. We just have to use that one line only, and it will do all the functions of console writing and all. So this makes our program more and more easier, so that we don't have to write a lot of lines of code. So the advantages are easy to read, easy to modify. So in case we want to modify our function, for example, we want to modify a printf function, we just have to modify it in one place and it will be reflected wherever it is used. And also C code becomes more and more transportable between different machine architecture. So if we want to have a different version of printf in one architecture and different version of printf in another architecture, we can ship it with while doing a build with different versions, and it will become more and more transportable. So what are preprocessor directives? Here are the list of preprocessor directives, which are macros, header file inclusion, which we have already used a lot. Header file inclusion is nothing but hash include some header files. For example, we have include lot of time stdio.h almost all times. So this is example of header file inclusion. Conditional compilation, we'll be covering this and some other directives. So this is a map of how preprocessor directives are used. Uh, this is file inclusion, which we have used lot, hash include stdio.h. Macro substitution directive, where we define some variables or define some inline function or define some small functionality and which can be used in a program again and again. Conditional directives are like conditional compilation. For example, we have two different machines in which we want a program to be compiled, and one machine uh, uses a certain type of instructions, and one other machine uses certain type of instructions. So we can do a conditional compilation. We can say if machine type is 1, compile this code. If machine type is 2, compile this code. So earlier in this slide we have talked about C code become more and more transportable between different machine architecture. Uh, these conditional directives are main facilitators for it, because it can do a conditional compilation, and based on a type of machine architecture, it will generate our output, so that we don't have to write two different codes. We just have to write a single code. We have to maintain a single code, and this will become life of programmer very easy, so that uh, if any change that has to be made in the file, it has to be made in one place and it will be reflected everywhere. Also, there are some miscellaneous directives, for example pragma, error, inline. So mostly operators which are used in preprocessors are hash or double hash. So let's check what all are the predefined macros. So these are the list of predefined macros. For example, date, time, file, line, stdc. So what these macros does? Date will give us the current date in mmmmdd 5 format. Time will give us a time in HHMMSS format. File will give us which current file we are using. Like if you are using sample.c, if you are writing this code in sample.c, it will give that you are using sample.c. Mostly this macro is used for logging purpose. So suppose we are having multiple C files and we want to use logging functionality, and this will help us in debugging also. Suppose there is some problem in our code and we analyze our logs. So from this file macro we can get which file is printing which piece of code, and we can get the root cause of the error by going to that file, checking our code. So this is very important macro. Line, this gives us which line number is executed. So it's a self-explanatory that contains a current line number which is as a decimal constant. STDC defines as one when compiler compiles with an ANSI standard. So this is a standard which ANSI standard is used. Let's see one example. Consider this code. I'm printing the macros, say printf file, which is underscore file, state, which is underscore date, time is underscore time, line is underscore line, ANSI is underscore type of ANSI, and this will be the output. That file is, I am using main.c file. Today is 1st of August. It's 1448. Line number is 8, and I'm using ANSI 1 standard. So this is how I can use the predefined macros. I'll suggest you should try this example in your own system and see what output it comes. So what are our other preprocessor directives? There are hash define, which substitutes preprocessor macro, hash include, which includes another file, hash undefined, which undefines a macro. Suppose we have defined some macro and later point of time we want to undefine. For example, we want to use hash define it for only a limited number of lines, and then we don't want to use it, so we can use undefined. If defined, if def is to check if a macro is defined or not. If n def is returns true if a macro is not defined. If hash if test if a compile time condition is true. So this is done at a compile time only. Else is a standard alternative of if, and if ends the preprocessor condition. Hash error prints the error message. Pragma issues a special command to compiler using a standardized method. So let's take one example. Hash include stdio.h. This here we have included the file. We used hash include. So we'll be using a library function stdio.h. Hash define height equal to 100. So this is the directive that we are using here. Hash define number equal to 3.14. Hash define letter equal to a. Hash define letter sequence abc. Hash define backslash character slash question mark. If you print, and we can use this. So these are nothing but it can be used as a constants. So for example, we want height to be equal to 100 throughout our program. We need not have to define it again or declare one variable and use it in different functions. We can do it with a hash defined preprocessor. Okay, if def else and if. So let's see this example. Hash include stdio.h. This here we are including the stdio.h. Hash defined hello. We have defined hello in main. So it will check if defined hello. If hello is defined, then it will print hello is defined. Else if it prints hello is not defined. So this happens at the compile time only. So if hello is defined, this printf will be compiled. Otherwise, this printf will be compiled. So if, else, and if. So this is one more example of if, else, and if. So I am defining hello. I am including stdio.h. So if not defined, I am using here if not defined. If not defined, hi hi. So hi is not defined. That means this condition will be true, and printf hi is not defined. So we are going to define here. So we will define hi equal to 300. Else HI is already defined in the program, and if. So what this program will do, so it is checking if a particular preprocessor is defined or not. So in this case, HI is not defined, so it will say okay, HI is not defined, let's define it. So it will define HI, and we'll go on. In case if HI is defined here, this piece of statement will not be executed, it will directly go to here. So this is a very straightforward way. Use of pragma. So pragma is a very important preprocessor, where suppose we have defined two functions here, function 1 and function 2. This place we have declared two functions, function 1 and function 2. Now pragma startup function 1. So before main function, function 1 will be executed, and pragma exit. So before exit, before our program is completed, that means after completion of main function, function 2 will be executed. So what in this case, what will be the output of the program, since we have declared pragma startup as function 1? So function 1 is called before main function call, then now we are in main function, then function 2 will be called, function 2 called just before end of main function. So this is how the pragma preprocessor works. You can try this at this code and see what output you get. Preprocessor operators, which are macro continuation, stringize, string pass, string token pasting, and define operator. Let's see what all these. So macro continuation operator. So in case our macro is too long and it's not coming up in a single line, we can use a continuation operator. Continuation operator is nothing but it will just it will not break our macro, it will continue our macro. So in case suppose this is our macro and it is not fitting it in one line, we can use slash to say that okay, macro is not coming in one line, so this is my continuation operator. But so that the compiler knows that this is or the preprocessor knows that this is not a different macro but a same macro, so it will not throw an error. So hash define message for a, b, and continuation operator printf a and b, I love India. Okay, so this is what you can try it out. So this is stringize operator. Stringize or a number sign operator, when used with a macro definition, converts a macro parameter into a string constant. This operator may be used only in a macro that is specified argument or a parameter list. So this macro is used to convert a particular macro into a string. So how this macro is used? So in this example, I'm using both continuation and stringize. So here this is a standard stdio.h. Now this is my macro where I'm using a continuation operator. Now in main function I'm using message for Carol and Deborah. So message for A, B. So here I'm using A, here I'm using B. Now Carol will be replaced with A and Deborah will be replaced with B. So our final output will be Carol and Deborah, I love India. So this is my output of stringize operator. Define operator. Define preprocessor operator is used in constant expression to determine if an identifier is defined using hash define. So for example, let's see this code. In this code we have defined stdio.h. Now this check if message is defined or not. If not defined message, then define it and end. So this is kind of a method which checks if a particular identifier is defined or not. Uh, so if we can use it with defined and not defined functions also. So here in this case we are checking if message is not defined, then define a message, so that when we are using it in a main function, we don't get any error like message is not defined or something like that. So now the next is parameterized macros. Parameterized macros are nothing but it accepts arguments and performs some function. So macro with argument must be defined using hash define. Argument list is enclosed in parentheses. So this is the argument list is enclosed in parentheses. Spaces are not allowed between the macro name. So we don't use spaces in between. So, the standard example is, for example, hash defined square of x, which is equal to x into x. So this is a macro square of x. Okay, and when we call this macro, ultimately we'll be calling this x into x. So it's like a small function which is also called as the inline function, where we don't have to define a function in our program. It's a macro which can perform small operations like calculating square or adding two numbers or doing some arithmetic operation. So for example, say we have a macro, say max x of y, which gives a value what is the maximum between x and y. So if x is greater than y, it will return x, otherwise it will return y. This is a very small macro which is called inline function also. So which now in program, how we can use it in program. Max between 20 and 10 is just call max, give two values 10 and 20, and it will return the result. We need not have to write the function for this.
I'm sure you enjoyed learning from this video. Please like the video, and if you have any doubts regarding this video, please comment us in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more such informative videos. Do look out for other related videos in our playlist. For more information, visit our website now. Keep learning with Intellipaat.